Buenos dias. Still here in Hotel Mazante, still here in Managua, Nicaragua. And I've been promising to give you an extensive detail of the trials and tribulations of assembling my paperwork from the States so I can live here long term. So, the timeline for collecting documents from the U.S., I wanted to start back with why am I seeking residency versus just being a perpetual tourist in Nicaragua until their government says that I need to file for the residency. There's a lot of misconceptions about residency programs. You're not seeking citizenship, but ultimately the only benefit that truly matters in the moment is I'd be eligible for a $20,000 tax exemption when I ship my household goods. I've been downsizing for years. I planned on living in a tiny home. I wanted to build houses with shipping containers. I may still do that in the future. But ultimately, I don't have a lot to own. You don't ship furniture, except I have an heirloom piece I have a dresser and a nightstand that was purchased for me when I was born. So that stuff is going on almost 55 years old. But furniture you'll buy locally, and you'll buy it from the person who actually created it for a fraction of the cost that you'd pay in the States. Appliances, there's no reason to ship an appliance here, pay for shipping, and potentially pay a tax when the appliances cost roughly the same amount of money here as they do in the States. What I do have is I have a fair amount of home recording equipment, synthesizers, keyboards, and all the wires, plugs, and things that go with it, which may or may not be considered household goods when I ship it. That's a different animal in its entirety. There will be a future benefit with residency that you can get $50,000 worth of home improvements tax exempt. So if you're building your own place, solar, water pumps, building materials, windows, insulation, all those kinds of things could be reduced in cost with a tax exemption versus a 15% VAT tax. So that's really it. That's the only real benefits other than doing border runs. And as I've determined with the necessity of repeating visits back to the States to get my medication from the VA, I'm going to be doing border runs roughly every 90 to 180 days anyways. So again, a perk for shipping household goods after I'm settled in, a perk on home renovation tax exemptions once I've established a long-term home. That would be for ownership, unless you come to an agreement with a renter or the owner of the property to allowed to be doing property improvements while still renting. So I made a very articulate timeline stamp here, so I'm going to be reading from this to you, and please bear with a grain of salt that this is a long, tedious process for what should be fairly simple stuff. So I am retired. I'm over 45 years old, and I can show proof that I have over $1,200 USD coming in per month that qualifies me for the Pensioners Residency Program in Nicaragua, known as the Pensionado Residencia. So most application process for a residency program will be completed inside the country of Nicaragua. In my case, I needed a handful of documents from the States before I got here because it becomes far more difficult to try to collect those once you're out of the country and you have a higher expense for shipping. And as you're about to find out, shipping isn't always all that guaranteed regardless of the carrier. So the main thing I needed to do was, for many of these documents, I need to have them notarized and or apostilled. If you're not familiar with apostilled is basically a formal form of authentication of a foreign document by countries that are in the Hague Convention agreements. So you can get various levels of authentication. Once I have them all completed, they must also be translated into Spanish. I do not advise getting them translated into Spanish before you get here. It would behoove you to have them officially translated once you're in country. There is criteria for the level of of certification for the translators, and quite simply, if you do it here, there's money going into the local economy. So kind of read between the lines of that. Your simplest path is to do as much as you can here, but there are a handful of documents that you need to get the legwork done stateside. So an applicant for residency must have their birth certificate, must be notarized and apostilled by the state of issue. So I'm a Florida resident, but I was born in the state of Illinois. Therefore, my Illinois birth certificate needs to be notarized by the state of Illinois, and it needs to be apostilled by the state of Illinois. Those are two separate actions. Luckily for me, when I went in the U.S. Army in the Wayback Machine in '92, I already had to have my birth certificate notarized by the state registrar in Illinois, so I really only needed to mail it to the state of Illinois for the apostille. When you are doing that, you're going to be sending the original document, you're going to be sending a cashier's check for various amounts, and you're going to include a self-addressed, pre-stamped envelope or prepaid postage, air bill, what have you, to the appropriate authority, in which case Illinois has an office in Chicago that handles my birth certificate versus going to Springfield, the capital proper. So the cashier's check, the prepaid postage, the original birth certificate being sent to Illinois. Now, for the pensioner option versus somebody that's a rentista or an investor program, you need to have notarized and apostilled copies of annual pension statements and or benefit letters. I have a very small, teeny pension from the state of Florida after 13 years of faithful service. So I needed to have that notarized. Well, it's a state-level document, therefore I can have it notarized by a state-level notary. I went to my local credit union where I have an account, so I could be sending it with a cashier's check, the pre-addressed envelope, to the Capitol in Tallahassee. Federal documents. I have a VA benefits letter, federal level, from the Veterans Health Administration, and I have an SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance benefits letter from Social Security Administration. There is no such thing as a national or federal notary. However, they will need to have a signature and a signature block on them, and we're going to get more into that later. You mail those off for the apostille to the State Department, the federal U.S. State Department. So I believe the actual address was in Maryland, just across the river. With that, so in regards to the notary for a service for the birth certificate and a source of income for state-level agency, you must ensure the proper notarial verbiage. I don't claim to be a subject matter expert, and evidently the subject matter experts weren't subject matter experts. Every state is going to have different notarial statement requirements. So, these documents are also going to be time sensitive. I'm going to explain to you with these different agencies why these certified copies of the originals, you can really beat your head against the wall trying to connect the different directions with these, with the different days of the week. I went ahead and called people ahead of time, confirmed the information that I thought I knew based off what was posted on their websites, and got an affirmation of the very simple process to get one document in with a check and a return postage envelope so I could get this document back. This is not rocket surgery. The documents are time sensitive. So as an example, you don't want to send in old data. If you have an annual benefit that goes up with a COLA increase, like the VA often has a cost of living increase at the end of the calendar year, the Fed's fiscal year begins with October 1st, but you will see those approved increases happen at the end of December. For Florida, the annual fiscal year is July 1st, and we would see a cost of living increase if there is one at that time. You don't want to send in old data. So regardless of when you plan to submit documentation, it would behoove you to send documents after the cost of living increase for that year, because at least now you know the data is going to be valid for at least 12 months. The cashier's checks, it's also worth noting, will often expire as well. In our case, there was a 60-day expiration on my cashier's checks from my credit union before you can take an action on either a missing or unprocessed check. that's going to play a very important role in all the douchebaggery to follow. So here is the list of what I needed processed. Illinois birth certificate, already notarized by the state of Illinois. A cashier's check, prepaid envelope, payment for shipping, mailed to Chicago, Illinois. State of Florida pension statement, notarized by a local notary. Cashier's check, prepaid envelope, payment for shipping, mailed to Tallahassee, Florida. VA benefit letter, no notary on FedDocs. The cashier's check, prepaid envelope, postage paid, mailed to U.S. State Department. The Social Security benefit letter, again, no notary on federal docs. It's already in one cashier's check with the benefits letter. It's being mailed together with the VA benefits letter, and it's all going to the same place. So that one's kind of the twofer. So far, we're only dealing with single-digit documents. Again, this is not rocket surgery. Relatively simple procedures. I've got almost 20 years of various governmental, administrative, bureaucratic, human resource, personnel experience. I know how to shuffle paper, especially at this simple level. Well, folks, the train wreck theater is about to begin, and I'm about to go into a nearly 5-month process to get these documents. Starting with August 6, 2024. I call the State Department to get verbal instructions confirmed from what's on their website. I contact the Florida Department of Retirement Services to confirm over the phone what is posted on their website. I spoke to a VA rep over the phone to confirm what was on their website. I now have my marching orders. 3 days later, August 9th, I visit my local credit union to get the cashier's checks. So, the cashier's checks to U.S. State Department for a total of $40 for the 2 documents, $20 per document, 1 check. State of Florida, per their verbal instructions and their website, a $20 check to them. And State of Illinois, a whopping $2 cashier's check to them. I get complimentary notary service at my credit union, so I had them notarize the state pension letter, because that's the only state-level document that I had. Then I spent the following on postage. I went to the UPS store so I could get this expedited, have a tracking number. I did not do overnight, but even still, without doing overnight, to mail a whopping 3 to 4 pieces of paper per envelope. Mailing to the State Department was $42.99. Mailing to Illinois was $44.01. And mailing to the state of Florida was $40.83. That's August 9th. Fast forward, August 21st of last year, Florida State Notary, I'm informed, is inaccurate. So the state kicks it back with the check, the $20 check, and I'm now have to print a new benefits letter. I returned to the UPS store, asked them to do the new notary. That was a $10 fee for me. It's complimentary at my credit union. But evidently, the branch manager of the credit union didn't know how to notarize documents after being a notary for many years. So, I have to mail this again. It's another $42.82 to resubmit to state of Florida. We now fast forward to August 23rd of last year. State of Illinois has completed my birth certificate, but instead of mailing it back to the address on the self-addressed returned air bill by UPS, UPS in its infinite wisdom decided to mail my birth certificate to an immigration law firm across town in Chicago. My original birth certificate. I spend days dealing with UPS over the phone, transferred to very rude, condescending customer support with a heavy accent. I don't pretend to know where. It doesn't matter where. The customer service was rude. I was insured. I already received my document. If I'd already received my document, I wouldn't be telling you that you've lost my document. I can see by the tracking number you shipped it across town to Chicago, and I can't figure out how Chicago, Illinois gets confused with Punta Gorda, Florida. Notice the articulation of the pronunciation, so we don't get it wrong. So that was August 23rd. Finally, September 4th, I get my birth certificate returned to me, but the UPS driver leaves it in a puddle next to my garage door, almost ruining my original birth certificate. But it is complete. So, first document's done September 4th. 3 more to go. September 4th also, the Florida rejects my notary statement for the second time. This time they send me a photocopy of the verbiage that's on the form telling me it's wrong. So you didn't show me the correct verbiage you want, but you redundantly provided the verbiage that's already on my form, tell me that the verbiage is wrong. And this time they tell me that I shouldn't be sending a $20 check, I should be sending a $10 check. Something they didn't correct the first rejection. So I have to go back to my credit union to cancel the $20 cashier's check and to issue a new $10 cashier's check and print my third copy of my state pension letter. September 5th, I visit the clerk of court's office asking the registrar office about guidance on notary statements needed by the state of Florida. My county happens to be one of 3 in the state of Florida that no longer provides notary service, even though that's exactly where I had my DD-214 notarized and made a matter of public record in the Wayback Machine. So they also could not tell me the information that the state needed to authenticate a notary statement within the state of Florida, even though they're the clerk of courts and deal with notarized documents, but they don't notarize themselves any longer. I go back to the credit union. I explain the situation that nobody seems to know how to do a proper notarial statement on a document in the state of Florida. To her credit, the teller knows exactly what needs to happen because 4 years earlier, the state of Florida added 4 words to the notarial statement, so it gave the option of electronic documentation, and she already has it pre-printed on her stamp, something her own branch manager does not have or know to do for 4 years, even though he renewed his notary license within the last 2 years, something the UPS store who charges money for notarial statements and didn't update their stamp, but the cashier at the credit union did know what needed to happen. So we are now at the point where I'm getting the proper notarial statement on the 3rd version of the state form, and I have to send in the $10 check, and here I am spending another $42.82 on postage for the 3rd time to Tallahassee. Still on September 5th, I get home from this task, and the State Department has rejected my submissions. I'm told I need a wet signature on these documents. Now, when you see a wet signature, that means it's actually somebody's name, their job title, and an actual ink copy of a signature. Not just a form letter from the director or to whom it may concern. It has to have an individual that could potentially be accountable for the document that they authenticated. So, that was not listed on the State Department's website, and it was not stated when I contacted them back at the beginning of August. So, the VA benefit letter that you can produce off of the internet does not have a wet signature or a full signature block. It just has the director's name. Social Security also, if you download from their website, does not have a wet signature with a full individual's name. So, for the VA, normally your quickest answer would be to go to your regional VA office. My regional VA office is in St. Petersburg, nearly 100 miles from my house, and due to workload constraints, if you'd like to speak to a human there and have a teleconference and or have an in-person appointment, it's a 90-day wait to see a human or speak to a human, because I had already requested a copy before from them, and they just sent me the generic one that I can print offline myself. So, Social Security, I'm in luck. My town in Charlotte County, Florida, has a regional Social Security office in Port Charlotte, Florida. I want to give a shout out. That is great customer service with every single visit I made to that office. They were always considerate, polite, professional. I think the longest I ever waited to be seen was 25 minutes, and I never went in with an appointment. So, when the State Department rejects your documentation, they keep the money. That is posted on their website. Whether or not they approve or deny, they keep the check. So I'm out $40 plus the postage, and now I need to get wet signatures. So I call the VA hotline. Now, because I'm a former state employee who had access to VA databases, I have a restricted file. Not every VA employee who handles benefits information can have access to my file. It's ratcheted up a little bit. So only people in a particular regional office up in Minnesota have access to my file. So I contact the VA hotline. They come to the realization my file is restricted. They transfer me. I get transferred between 3 humans before it's determined, oh, you need a wet signature on a benefits letter. That's very strange. And I said, well, I can't be the first veteran needing a benefits letter for the purposes of expat living overseas to document their pensions. I am not the first person to do this. That can't be that rare of an issue. So that individual finally understood that I needed a copy, said it would be mailed out that day. I went over to the local Social Security office, met with a rep. Due to personal reasons, was very reluctant to put her name on a form, but she did so, and I thanked her graciously. So now I'm just waiting for the VA document. This was September 5th. September 6th, I called the State Department asking them why they contradicted in the rejection letter the information that I'd received in spoken instruction and on their website instruction. Had a very condescending, rude asshole on the phone from the State Department that said, and I quote, well, sometimes people have difficulty in understanding simple things. Asked to speak to a supervisor, and he hung up on me. September 6th, U.S. State Department, tax-paid position. Fast forward September 11th last year, I received the new VA letter. I went to the credit union requesting a new $40 cashier's check for the federal resubmission. Now, remember I mentioned cashier's checks, good for 60 days. I got this on September 11th. The clock is ticking. That's a little foreshadowing. I'm still pending the receipt of the VA letter, the correct one, because they just sent me another copy of the one I can pull offline after a week of speaking to a human to ensure I'd get a wet copy. September 15th rolls around. I get the receipt of the state's Florida documentation. I finally have my second document done. Got the birth certificate from Illinois done. Now I've got my Florida retirement pension statement done, September 15th. We're about 6 weeks into this. Clue, it should only take 6 weeks to get all of this done. That's the timeline presented in all these. 4 weeks for the states, 6 weeks for the Fed. So we were at September 15th. I've got 2 of 4 documents done. Fast forward to October 16th. I received the VA letter, which is identical to the online form, again, without a wet signature. I call the VA hotline again. I get 3 transfers. I have to get to restricted files person. And I speak to the identical rep who helped me the first time. She then contacts the local regional office in St. Pete, explains to them what I need and why I need this really strange request for a wet signature hard copy. Lo and behold, the next business day, October 17th, I get the signed copy in the mail. 1-day mail. Almost never get 1-day mail within the state of Florida. Not anymore. So, October 17th, I go to the UPS store yet again. They know me on a first-name basis now. With both the Social Security statement that I had signed and the VA benefits letter, which is signed, with a second $40 cashier's check to the State Department, and I drop another $44.98 in shipping. That's October 17th. Fast forward to November 20th. I cannot find any status on the State Department's website or by phone hotline on my paperwork that they've had for over a month. So November 20th, I tried to contact my U.S. Senator, which for my part of the state is Marco Rubio, for assistance in retrieving federal documents. Well, Marco had been tapped on the shoulder to run the State Department office, so the last 3 months in his role as a Florida senator, his office was no longer providing any assistance to constituents in the state of Florida while in that role. Nice paycheck for doing nothing, while he transitioned into department head of the State Department. And obviously, the new director of the State Department, or pending director of the State Department, isn't handling inquiries on the failures of the State Department. I was then directed to go to Rick Scott's office. So I go to Rick Scott's website, still November 20th, and despite the fact that the elections had already occurred 2 weeks earlier, the main website that I was given was his re-election page. He's already won the re-election. I dig a little further, get to the original government website where I had to submit in triplicate the same information by email to his office to explain that, one, this is the second time around that I've submitted, that I've wasted over $80 each time, and my cashier's check. My bank can't confirm or deny whether the money's been processed or not. I can't confirm or deny from the State Department by phone or email whether they processed it or not, but I definitely haven't received my forms yet. December 2nd, I finally received my VA benefit letter and Social Security documents, both apostilled. So, credit to my former boss, who was at that time Governor Rick Scott, who is now the state senator in Florida. And, well, folks, that's just a dip in the shallow end of the gene pool when it comes to digging with too big to fail governmental organizations, so siloed that their duties to humans that actually care about quality service is stifled. What was the grand expenditures of all this? Well, in time, 118 days, and none of this should have taken over 45 days. Total cost in cashier's checks. I spent $112 in cashier's checks. I got $10 of that rebated, so $102 out of pocket. Postage to send 2 and 3 pieces of paper per organization. $215.63. Notarial service. I'm not supposed to have to pay, but I did go to a private party. $10. We're looking at nearly $350 to get 4 pieces of paper rubber stamped, and months of what should take weeks. Again, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I do have more inside knowledge and experience in traversing the various county, state, federal, military organizations. And this was enough to make me kind of lash out to my therapist in several sessions over the months that this happened, because all I wanted to do was leave. I have a valid passport. I got the documentation to get benefits for where I'm looking to go. I just wanted to leave. And this process only solidified that opinion greater. So, check the resources while you can on website. Call human beings in the organizations that you need to submit your documentation through. I personally would document the name, date stamp of the time that you spoke to the individual. Keep all correspondence. Be prepared to contact your state and federal representatives. And I hope you don't have to spend as much money, time, and effort as I did. That was the Federal and State Department of Redundancies issues with me. And with that, I wish you a good day and audio.